Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna do that again. So we should be joyous because the Hoosiers are now 8-0. So they just won. So I'm gonna do it one more time and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Yay, this is so exciting. Thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Crossley, and I wear many hats in this community, but today I come to you as the chair for Advocate for Social Justice from the Kappa Tau Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and you are now sitting at our Divine Nine Sorority Town Hall. So thank you all so much. On a beautiful Saturday, you could be anywhere, but you are here, and that means a lot to us. So thank you all for coming. We are 10 days away from Election Day, and however you vote, you just must go and vote. But before you make your decision, we think that we don't think, we know that all politics are local. So while everybody is definitely concerned with a lot of things that are happening at the federal level, which we should, we have things that are impacting our community. So we have local candidates from county commissioner to county council at large. We will also hear from our school board candidates as well today. So once again, I thank you so much for coming. I hope that you are going to get some information from candidates today. If you haven't had a chance to vote, early voting is happening. This is the first Saturday of 2 Saturdays. So this Saturday and next Saturday will be the Saturday for early voting. Without further ado, I would like to toss it over to our moderator, Dr. Jessica McLean.
Now let's get to what's important. All right, so I'm going to go over the rules. The time limit, each candidate will have a time limit. You will get 2 minutes to respond. When you're down to 30 seconds, someone will hold up a pink sign indicating 30 seconds left. When your time is up, there will be a green sign that indicates your time is up. Now, my audience, ain't no heckling. Ain't no heckling. And we will, if time allows, take questions from the audience. So, without further ado, let us get started, shall we? All right. So, I am going to ask each one of my lovely local candidates to introduce yourselves. We'll give you 90 seconds to introduce yourselves, and we shall start with Julie Thomas.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, and thank you, Kappa Tau Omega Chapter, for hosting this today. It's a beautiful day, and you all are here, which is meaningful to all of us, I think. And what I would like to ask is, how many of you voted early already? How many of you plan to vote? And how many of you are bringing someone to vote? That should be every hand in the room, right? Bring someone to vote. I'm Julie Thomas. I'm Monroe County Commissioner since 2013. I focus on innovation, environmental sustainability, and stewardship, and engaging with our county residents. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to work for the residents of Monroe County, and I hope to continue in this job. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jody Madeira. I am a new face in Bloomington politics, and I'm running for County Commissioner District 3. I am a law professor at Indiana University. We've lived in the community since 2007 and somewhat famous on the campaign trail for having 7 kids who go to a variety of schools around MCCSC. And in this election, I'm supporting jobs, infrastructure, and affordable housing.
Thank you for having me. I'm Joe Van Dievener. I'm Director of Street Operations here at the City of Bloomington right now. I'm a lifelong resident of Monroe County. My wife and our family have lived there 58 years. I'm running for growth, jobs, housing, with the completion of 69, using that to attract jobs here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trent Deckard, and I am so thankful to be invited and to participate, and thank you for moderating this, Doctor. I just want to introduce myself by saying that I'm a current member of the County Council. I do have the great honor of serving as the president of the council. It's, in my opinion, one of the strongest councils that we've had because they're all leaders and workers, and to that end, my philosophy is trying to get things done. I don't believe governmental bodies should have meetings simply to have meetings. I think that we have to focus on the problems in the community and then move forward towards solutions. And to that end, I look at everything through the prism of my role as a teacher. I look at it through the prism of a 9-generation family member that always wonders about, for all the new people that come into this community, how good is that process, how easy is that process, and what are we doing as officials to make that accessible? And I think for a lot of people, getting into the community is an issue, finding their way, finding their ability to afford and to survive and thrive for families of all different types. And I think that we have to answer those questions. And so problem solving we do, and every day is different in that regard. And I look forward to our questions today.
Good afternoon. My name is David Henry. I'm running at large to be the newest member of the Monroe County Council. I am also the chairman of the Monroe County Democratic Party, and I encourage everybody to support our entire slate of Democrats here in the fall here for next year in January. When I declared to run in January, I was concerned about making sure that we have a county council that asks why when we fund things. Why do we fund the things that we do, and maybe some things we should stop doing. That we should fund our values, which means a little more than campaign rhetoric, but it means that where we put our money where our mouth is. That tells us a lot about what our community values and doesn't value, and how are we going to do that better in the next 4 years for a community that still faces poverty issues in our community, with 1 in 4 members of our community living in poverty, and with many renters in the city of Bloomington that can't get on that ladder. So housing affordability, we got to get stuff down, answers down on council. I'm up for that discussion today and in the next 4 years to move ahead. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for organizing this forum. And thank you who are sitting in, those of you who are Zooming in, and those of you who are watching from afar. My name is Joe Davis, and I am an independent voice for the people of Monroe County, Indiana. It is time for our local governments, both city and county, to listen to the voice of the people and to address the needs of those people. There are many big issues that we are facing right now, costly taxpayer issues, that we need to decide as a community what is best for our community. I'm a farm boy from Cass County, Indiana, and from the earliest of my days, I was taught the values of land stewardship and community caretaking, and we all value this. It is time for all of us to become a bigger part of what our community wishes, needs, and desires. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. I would like to take a moment and say that Cheryl Munson will not be with us today and be able to participate in this candidate forum. So let's get started. What made you want to run for the seat of, we'll start with county commissioners? Again, the question is, what made you want to run for the seat for county commissioners?
It's a great question, and it's something that resonates really well with this group of folks here in our audience, because anybody can become a county commissioner. I have a PhD, but it's in Russian history. It's not served me in this job much at all, although we've had an occasional Russian visitor. But I will say that there is no way to learn this job except by getting into it and doing it. And I encourage everyone to consider applying for boards and commissions because that's the first step in experience. I love this job because it's important to every person in this county. It pertains to the built infrastructure, the natural infrastructure, protecting our lake, creating innovative programs, rural housing repair, septic replacement. Neither is glamorous, both are necessary. But doing the work of the people every day, the job is not glamorous, but it is interesting and different, creative, and exciting.
Thank you so much. Before the next one, I'm going to ask each candidate to please pull the mic closer so we will be able to hear your responses.
Hi, so I might be a new face, but I've been thinking about political service for some time. 2 years ago, I almost ran for District 62, which used to be Ellington's, and so this would have been when Dave Hall ran. And I began talking to people, and I thought that was the wrong level for me to be involved in. I've been involved in statewide politics for some time. You know, I've been an advocate against gun violence. I've been an advocate for reproductive justice. But I think I felt like I would be screaming into the void. And so the more I talked to people, the more I became interested in local issues. And it was really too early to declare at that point. So for the last 2 years, I've been talking to people around the community and hearing about their needs and their concerns. And so I really feel like my best time is served on the local level. I'm a member of this community. I'm never going to leave. My kids, I hope that there's jobs for them. And so I saw my commitment to the local level as best assuring quality of life for these resources we have. You know, the students that graduate from Ivy Tech and from IU, the people who moved here to work but can't find housing, you know, and so are stuck in apartment living, and rents are going up and taxes are going up. A jail we need to build. And as a law professor, you know, Julie said this occupation is not glamorous. Well, neither is necessarily being a law professor. And I was really tired of writing law review articles that I felt were going to be read by 5 people. So I wanted to have a bigger impact on my community.
I felt there were a lot of folks that lived outside the city limits that didn't have a voice, whether they were Republicans or Democrats. I work in the city all day, but yet I live on the outskirts of Monroe County, and there are different concerns and different needs and wants out there that I feel like those folks don't always get listened to, in my opinion. The land ordinance, I feel, is just going to add to a problem that we already have. You know, the rural county, the rural community is drying up and aging, and you know, I just worry that we're going to lose our schools out there and just have to bus our kids farther.
Thank you. For members that are running for the position of county council at large, what made you want to run for the seat?
Yeah, thank you very much. My family, my wife Kyla and I, we're doers in being involved in serving, whether it's church, whether it's community, what have you. And if we're not, we end up turning into people that kind of go out into the garage or talk around the house and gripe about local issues or things not getting done. Maybe some of you are like that as well. If you are, I'd recommend you run for office, because we need people putting that action out of the garage and out of the driveways and into local government. And frankly, if I had sat home in the last term or even now and watch things happen with meetings that may not get to a resolution or solutions that don't get done, I would be frustrated, and I wouldn't be sending a good lesson to my daughter who just joined us in the back row that we do serve, we get things done. And I have a passion for this place. I was born here. I intend to be here as long as it'll have me, hopefully for the rest of my life. But I want to see this be the best place. And if we think even in structures like this or in our history, we've had a lot of people doing innovative things and changing it and doing it in new ways. And we will again, but we have to write that chapter now. And I'd rather be at that table assisting that so the best minds get it done than in that driveway griping about things I'd like to change.
Yeah, I've always had the bug for public service as long as I can remember. It goes back to being 18 years old and offering up my own version of an internship in my small town in Ohio with my local mayor. It's what led me here to Bloomington to do my master's in local government administration at IU, and to have worked in government consulting for almost 20 years now, trying to just make things better in governments around the country, whether it's in the work that I do in emergency management and homeland security spaces, or just making sure things work. The second thing is I have 3 boys that are growing up in Bloomington and Monroe County. And I see other kids growing up in Bloomington and Monroe County. Some will not go to college here or anywhere, and their opportunities are not so great. I want to make sure that they and your kids and grandkids also have a chance to not just survive living here, but thrive here as well, and that's really important to me. I just think we can do better, and we need to ask why of our local government, and especially our county government. If elected, I'd be the only person on county council that has actually worked in the county government as a public health employee 20 years ago, where I got my start. And so I know what it is to be on the other side of the payroll, the other side of the decision-making in county government. And we need to ask if programs are still working, whether or not they are still serving the community and delivering. Maybe it's time to let some of those go. Maybe it's time to add some programming that the community wants to see to address issues of equity and justice in the community that were not necessarily front and center for us as a public policy making body 20 years ago when I worked in the county government. But it's those motivations, it's making sure the government works better for the community, whether it's the natural disasters we experienced over the summer where folks lost their power for a week and maybe threw their paycheck out with their spoiled groceries until power came back on, to just making sure we have a good public health system that provides access to women's health care that we just lost with the Futures Family Planning Clinic in the community. We can do better. I want to be part of that conversation. Thanks.
Excuse me. Thank you. It's really tough to say what turns a person toward political activism. It's not just any one thing. It's a litany of things where injustice is seen, observed, and frustration sets in. How can that be changed? What can we do? I always thought first you had to have the perfect family, perfect job. Then you could run for office. But then I realized anyone can run for office. They don't need to have the perfect life. There is no perfect life. We are all unique in our own way, in our own set of circumstances. We are powerful as individuals and as a people. We, the people, formed the government to serve us, the people. We, the people, elect our representatives to serve us, the people. Anyone can ask for this because that's what our country is based on. There's no time like the present. Stand up. You are powerful. Never forget that. You are powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question that I'm going to ask, I would like both the commissioners and county council candidates to respond. And we'll start with Dr. Thomas. What strategies do you believe county and city officials could and should pursue to address the city-county growing unhoused population? I'll read the question again. What strategies do you believe county and city officials could and should pursue to address the city and county growing unhoused population?
Sorry, this is a really important question, and it's one that impacts all of us. We've all probably known somebody that has ended up couch surfing or living in their car or camping somewhere. One of the things that we've done is we've directed American Rescue Plan Act dollars toward the new Beacon complex, which will provide not only day services, but also some transitional housing and a little bit of longer-term housing. What we have to do is to be creative about how we develop land. The county is not set up with the built infrastructure, roads, sewers, et cetera, nor the natural infrastructure. We have karsts, we have floodways that are huge. We have a lot of problems. But I think one of the things that I'm working on right now with the county development ordinance is developing processes where we can have cluster tiny home subdivisions. We're also working on where some of it's green, some of the land is green, and some of it is a very tiny community, little pocket community, and those houses would be affordable. Also working on a residential TIF, which is a tax increment finance district. There is space for that at North Park. There is sewer for that at North Park, thank goodness. And so that's the next thing we want to work on, which would be housing that is developed and geared for folks who are lower income. And it will help them build equity. We're also developing, right now, we passed some 300-some apartments that are away from campus over on West 3rd. Thank you.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to turn this on. So I think first and foremost, the solution is not to criminalize homelessness. And so one of my horrible revelations to my students this year was the Supreme Court case of Grants Pass. And this summer, the Supreme Court did decide that cities and counties, political subdivisions, it's going to be easier for them to criminalize not homelessness, but the behaviors that homeless individuals engage in because they have no choice, and sleeping in cars, camping outside. And so we're going to see a wave of anti-homeless legislation get passed in this country, and I think that's going to be very unfortunate, and I don't want Bloomington to be one of the places where that gets passed. So first and foremost, don't criminalize, don't send people to jail for behaviors associated with homelessness. I'm a big fan of heading home. I believe permanent housing is the solution that is evidence-based. And I really believe the city and county need to take joint action. So the city of San Jose and Santa Clara County set a great example for cities and counties across the country because they together applied for a $90 million bond to build permanent housing. That is something we could do here. Maybe not as much, but we could do joint action together to provide permanent housing. We need better access to substance disorder recovery services. We need better access to mental health services, both of which are intricately connected. We need better ways to prevent eviction, of course, because homelessness is rare, brief, and non-repeating for most people. So I think if we can keep people in the houses that they have, in the apartments that they have, that will help prevent many cases of homelessness. And we already have a benefit in this community, a tremendous benefit, actually, that's very, very rare in Indiana. We have problem-solving courts. We have a reentry court, we have a court for veterans, and we have a drug court. And we need to make sure those are adequately funded and that people in this community have access to a wide variety of recovery treatments, including medication-assisted treatment.
Well, I agree that we need better access to treatment. I think this is a good place where we could that we could partner up with Indiana University with counseling, mental health counseling, addiction counseling. I do think there has to be accountability on the other end, or there's not an end game. So that would be my only thing with that. And as you know, the homeless population has doubled in the last year, and I assume it'll probably double again, unfortunately. I think the one of the biggest things to fight that is to get jobs in here, to get blue-collar jobs in here for these folks to get themselves out of that rut, possibly buy a house or hopefully build a house.
I appreciate this question, and it's one that when I'm walking around town, I hear the most about of any issue. And I think one of the things we have to remind ourselves, and sometimes, let me know if you can't hear me, but I think sometimes what gets lost in the process that many of the individuals that we see, that we're thinking about, are just not this monolithic homeless term, but friends and neighbors and folks that in one way or another could be any number of us. I am very happy that the county supported the Heading Home initiative. I think sometimes in candidate forums or other venues, I hear people start talking about going in different directions or not supporting what that blueprint literally says that so many entities have invested in. I think we have to have a mission, follow a mission, and try not to reinvent the wheel. I also think among those friends, neighbors, and even visitors to the community that find themselves in these conditions, that we need to ask questions about what are your conditions? What is your perception of these conditions? What is going on? What is it that would actually, in your opinion, be best for you, help you, assist you, and get you to whatever that goal might be? And we may not be able to address all those goals, but I think sometimes we start ascribing from our privilege, you will be here and you will be there, and then we don't wonder why sheltering doesn't work or temporary housing doesn't work. And I think we need to figure that around condition supports and needs. Ultimately, that work alone, if we just did that well, would be the bulk of our lives. But I think that we have to engage that. We have to do it. And I think one thing we have to not do is demonize people who are otherwise facing likely the worst moment in their life. I hear some of the most demonizing language coming out of people I have known all my life in this community, and it is shameful. These are, again, friends, neighbors, brothers, sisters, children, loved ones.
I agree with much of what's been said up on the podium here, the dais so far. I'd like to maybe take a step back a little farther from where even Trent was, about the education piece we have to have for our whole community about what it is to see unhoused people in the community. I think Trent started to touch on it, and I think it is a sensitive topic for some that drive by Seminary Square and drive by places and make vast assumptions about what they're seeing, their perceptions out the window of their car versus the humans that are in various stages of distress or are living here or are transients to the community during the day. I mean, it is impossible to tell that from just looking out your window, what you're seeing. So I think leadership from the county, aside from the support of people that have been working on these issues for some time through Heading Home and other organizations, is to lead from our seats and be voices on the issue of educating our public, to get beyond some of the not in my backyard rhetoric that we hear in the downtown community about people that walk through the downtown core, through neighborhoods, and again, battling those perceptions. That is half the battle, is the education piece to our own community about what they're seeing, and then how they can also be part of solutions and listen more, and maybe less prescription of solutions, but listening more. I am also concerned about the lifelines to care in the downtown core. You know, as we move government institutions from our downtown core that provide lifelines to care, like the hospital that is now sitting on the bypass, we're losing the ability to tether to where the communities are. And so one thing I think the county should start to think about in the next 4 years is what those lifelines to care are, if they've been severed from the populations as we continue to move services out of the downtown, and what that really means for us. But those are some more philosophical viewpoints on addressing the unhoused issue through education of our community about what it is that people see and what the realities are versus the perceptions that they may hold. Thank you.
Our growing unhoused is a big issue, not only because those unhoused folks are coming from outside of our community, but also members of our own community are becoming unhoused because of the cost of rent, because of the lack of access for equity investments in property. But the first thing that we can do toward resolving this issue is get to know who these people are. Meet them, talk to them, learn their name, let them tell their story. Some of them will say, yeah, I was just dropped off by so-and-so police department. They drove me here to the bus station. Or someone else in a similar situation, unhoused, counties bring them, buy them bus tickets to Bloomington. Bloomington will solve their problems. Well, maybe we should be using some of our Tourism Bureau dollars to inform communities about how special their community is, and that they have the ability to deal with their own people. But there are certain things that we can do to certainly get people into housing. Number one is right away, get everyone on health care, HIP 2.0, get everyone on SNAP, food stamps, give them this support, and then with a full belly, they can do the walking and track down the paperwork they need to make things happen. And we as a community can help them help themselves. And we can also love each other in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to the next set of questions, I would like to remind the audience that you do have agency here in this forum. We would like for you, if you have any questions, please to write them down. We'll have someone to pick them up, and we will ask your questions. So just making sure that you are empowered and understand that you have agency in asking questions. So I want to take a moment for that. So, as the audience is getting their questions together, we will move on. The next question, I specifically want to talk to the candidates that are running for the county council at large, okay? So this question is, what is one area of county services you feel most needs additional resources, and why? What is the one area of county services you feel needs the most additional resources, and why? And I believe we will start with Mr. Decker. Yes.
All right. You know, this is one of the hardest questions I think I've ever had in a candidate forum, because the way that state law is structured, local government spends most of its time trying to, forgive the metaphor, pull the sheets over your feet that are hanging out at the foot of the bed, because covering what you do is so hard that you don't think about what you would eat or do if you could. And that metaphor may have been lost. But I think if there was an area that we could drastically get into, I think in the rural parts of this county, I'm probably not going to say this well, rental inspection, housing inspection. I think that when people leave the city's borders and they, as renters, as home dwellers, I think that there are things that are inspected there that could be done out into the county. I think strengthening that, the health department, as a result of that process, that's probably where that would be housed in some way on inspection. I think that could be an area. But I have to tell you, because my job is to fund all the existing things that we do, that could change hour by hour in my county service, because we run across so many different needs. We had ARPA dollars that thankfully came due to President Biden and Congress enacting those ARPA dollars, and we dispensed a lot of dollars, about $29 million towards various housing needs, around hunger issues, of sewer support in rural areas of the county, fire issues. We've done a lot by ambulances. And so we are not accustomed to that. But if more money came, I think expanding what we do on housing inspection, housing support could be a big deal.
Thank you for the question. I think the way I'd like to answer this is two parts. One is to understand a little bit about what the public good is, right? Trent indicated a little bit of it, that some of the public good is we have obligations by Constitution of the state of Indiana that have to be met by the county. Half of the county's budget goes to the criminal justice system by obligation. It doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for the county to make choices when you have to fund something by law that's required there. So you have these public goods that must be funded, and our activities of government to deliver for our community. And then maybe once you've met those obligations, you try to address inflation across the board in all the departments where people need a pay raise or things are getting more expensive to fund in the community. And once you've taken that slice of the pie, what seems to be left sometimes at the end of budget season is, well, a little wiggle room to maybe put money into a new project or innovation in the community. That's a very linear way of thinking about public goods and how we fund them. For me, I think there's two ways of going about it slightly differently. The first is a specific answer to the question, which is what's important to me is my background in emergency management. And working with FEMA and organizations that work not only on disaster response, but getting communities prepared for when bad things happen. And to do that, you have to know the state of your community. How resilient is it against disasters? Are there different people in the community that experience a daily disaster of socioeconomic conditions that they can't afford to keep their car gassed up or can't afford to keep food at home? How much risk does that put us at, when the thing happens in the community? I think getting an emergency management preparedness mindset through our county government, where we are asking those questions before the bad things happen, will start to expose and highlight things we need to put our efforts into to make sure that the whole community is ready for times of crisis, whether it's a tornado or just living here and trying to get through the tyranny of the present. The last thought I'll have is that, again, when we think linearly, sometimes we leave the questions that the community, I think, wants to hear unanswered, and those have to do with equity and whether or not we bake equity into all the decision-making that we do moving forward. Thanks.
Far and away, where the county services have the greatest need for further resources is in the area of raising up those who have the least among us. A lot of money came in from COVID, from ARPA, that was supposed to provide equity, get everybody on health care, get everybody access to the internet, to public transportation, such that they could be raised up, because the inequities were very evident during COVID. Very evident. It was the people who had the least were the ones who were having to work and be exposed and placed in the most danger. So we need to address housing, affordability. We need to make sure everybody is fed, has health care, has access to the internet, to public transportation, and to access to educational opportunities. Because if we all have these safety nets, these resources around us, it will be the rising tide that will lift all boats. Every boat will lift. But we need to raise the tide for those who have the least among us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question will be for the commissioners. It's an audience question. What specifically will you do to repair the disconnect that has developed between the commissioners and the city, county clerk, and the county sheriff? I will repeat this question. What specifically will you do to repair the disconnect that has developed between the commissioners and the city, the county clerk, and the county sheriff? Dr. Thomas, we'll start with you.
Thank you. This is a great question. It's a big one. I don't think we get more time, though. There is always at play everything we do as county commissioners. We are the executive and legislative branch of county government. Everything we do involves collaboration. We work with township trustees. We work with them on rural housing repair. We work with Bloomington Transit. We're working with them on a route. I don't know. Unfortunately, there is a perception that there's an issue between the commissioners and the sheriff, but we've been on the same page, and he was at the last meeting, and we talked through the property selection, and he supported and North Park, and that's what we voted on. So I don't see an issue there. We've been supportive throughout, keeping the jail kept up as much as possible. With the clerk's office, it's a one contract that became an issue. It was something that a lot of folks in the community stood up and said, you know, this contract is problematic. And so it was a contract that will do something that our county will do, which is to post election results. So our GIS coordinator is working on that. And city, it's a growing and evolving process. We have to look out for our interests, but at the same time work well with the city. The convention center is a great example of working well with the city. It is moving forward, and having a capital improvement board where city and county both selected members has led to great progress, quick progress, and they are moving forward expeditiously, carefully, and with input from the city and county both. So that's an example of something that works well. Annexation, we don't agree with one another on. That's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. We're all Democrats, but that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. We have different interests than the city has, and that's what we're reflecting. We listened to residents and fought annexation. Thank you.
So this is one of the issues that I'm most concerned about. I actually have a PhD in communication studies, and so one of my areas of research has been getting people how to break down differences and discuss, and 9 times out of 10, getting people in the same room is really what matters. Miscommunication and lack of collaboration lead to burnout and cynicism for everyone, so it's in everyone's best interest to meet in person, not meet online, but meet in person. And I think, as Julie said, there are several issues that we need to collaborate on. The first is the sewer issue, right? So the city, actually, the utilities board does have an out. In its discretion, it can extend sewer. Would an in-person meeting persuade someone that it's necessary to extend sewer for a particular project from which the city and county mutually benefit? I don't know. I haven't been in this office. I'd love to sit down and ask them that question. We need to coordinate with the city on housing and on development. And I don't know if that's being done because we've been talking a lot about the county development ordinance, but I don't know when the last time someone sat down with the city was and actually talked to their metropolitan planner, which is a huge asset. I guess on the county level, something I'd really like to see is the Community Justice Response Committee brought back, or Commission brought back. I think that the county lost an important voice when that commission was disbanded, and I definitely think we need to hear from those voices again. And we need to look at our commissions and make sure that they're adequately staffed. If they're not adequately staffed, we also need to engage people from the county and educate them on why it's important to participate in the commissions and have diverse voices and make sure those are represented. But again, my simple answer would be just to get people in the room together and meet in person, whether it's the sheriff, the county clerk, and to make sure that it's clear that the county officials respect those elected officials as duly elected bodies in their own right.
I agree with Jody. I think meeting in person is the best way to build those relationships. We have a new mayor here and a new council. I think it's an exciting opportunity for the city and the county to work together. I realize the litigation is still going on, but maybe that'll be over soon. But I think as soon as that's over, I think it would be a good time to move forward together.
Thank you so much. This next question also came from the audience, and this will be a question for everyone. Mr. Davis, we will start with you, but I will read the question to everyone. How do you plan to engage the Black, Asian, and marginalized communities? And how will you keep us safe? Again, the question is, how do you plan to engage with the Black, Asian, and marginalized communities? And how will you keep us safe? Mr. Davis, we'll begin with you.
Thank you for that question. The first thing that we'll do, again, is we'll get to know every person who belongs to a marginalized class, a minor class that's not just a bunch of white dudes making all the decisions. will it listen and will understand what their needs are and what they require to feel safe. And then we will make sure that their safety is guaranteed. Because if they are safe, we are all safe by that same measure. Perhaps we have to have new discussions as to what safety really means these days. Does safety mean that we have to give up our rights to free speech? Does safety mean that we step on others' rights? It's a community decision. We must have this discussion as a community. No one should feel that they do not belong. No one. I think that we are a commendable community. Throughout the county, we are trying to do the best for our people. And we will do the best for our people when we do it together. Thank you.
So I think one space that has been challenging for me to watch as a party chairman of a political party locally is how convenient our own community goes to our own safe, I say the Democratic Party community goes to its own safe spaces, which is downtown Bloomington. I've given a lot of thought to this over the past few years, that the party needs to get outside of its own comfort zone of just renting the convention center to hold dinners and the like. And I think that as I observe, is just being a little introspective here of elected officials, that we tend to expect the public to come to our spaces, right? It's the city hall, it's the courthouse in the dome, it's the public library auditorium, it's the downtown of Bloomington. And so I think we're, Joe, if I'm just building off a little of what he had said, that I think one thing that we have to get better at is taking this government to the spaces that you feel safe and comfortable in. I know that the county council at large, I think, I don't mean to pick on Trent, but I think you've done a few candidate or constituent meetings a year, and I know that, again, we tend to do those downtown, but I think we need to take the council to the corners of the community, and that means if that's field meetings or field hearings, in places that are more accessible to the lives, the work-life balance of community members that just don't feel like they're part of the conversation. I think we got to get better at taking the council to the corners and where that makes sense. And I will admit those blind spots. I think we need to listen more and talk less on this, and I'm open to ideas about where to bring the council, where to bring the government to have those field-type meetings and have those discussions. I will say this too, as a candidate, and we have candidate forums, constituent meetings, town halls, I think it's tired. You tend to see the same listening session concept, and it's almost like a government groupies go from corner to corner in town. It's the same faces in the audience that will follow an elected official to hear the same rhetoric, whether it's on the east side or northeast or northwest. So let's get better at going into spaces and having those meetings one-on-one with the community where they are. Thanks.
I appreciate this question very much, and first I want to say, David, I actually have done them in Bloomington, I've done them in Harrodsburg, I've done them in Eltsville, I've done them on libraries. One time when I was traveling in Greece, I did it online in the middle of the night, and I will continue to do it. One of the, I've served now as a federal congressional staffer, as a state agency head, a chief of staff, and now in local government. One of the things I've observed is I always get nervous when politicians walk in a room talking, and when they walk in a room and say, my plan is, because they're entering that room wrong. And usually those are some of the most least successful politicians ever. The best politicians walk in a room and they don't talk much. They observe, they listen, and that's why you see on my yard signs, our friend. I show up in spaces and I watch people and I listen. What is their story? What is the story they're not telling? And specifically for our Black, Asian, marginalized communities, I think that we as elected officials need to not only show up and listen, we need to show up in that friend role. We need to show up in a supportive role. We need to be asking people, why are you not running for office? You'd be a lovely candidate. You'd be awesome. You have dynamic ideas. You have good passion. We've got to do a better job at that and getting people into boards and commissions, then supporting them in those roles by empowering them and listening to them and not just having boards and commissions because it looks good on a campaign flyer. I think that those are important things that we need to do. Again, if you watch the national, state, and even local rhetoric, we have a lot of people that just talk, and they talk, and they talk. But we've got to have people that show up, observe, and act neighborly and friendly to each other because, good heavens, when the primaries are done, the races are over, we're all still here, and that circus has left us behind. How we act during it isn't gone. And that's how I've served, that's how I will serve. And I don't know that I always need an official event to get that sense of how people feel. I will also say one last thing. If I have, my time is up. I'm going to stop. Thank you. I found a soapbox.
I agree that appointing these folks to boards and commissions, I feel, would give them a voice. That's just like I said, that's why I'm running for folks that live outside city limits. I think give them a voice and a seat at the table to make known their concerns and what they think needs to be addressed. And, you know, I think that one of the things that attracted most of us to Bloomington, you know, we're losing in the sense of community, and folks seem to be a lot closer back then. And I think that's one of the things that has hurt us in the last 10 to 15 years.
I actually remember to turn on the mic this time. So this is something that's on my mind a lot because I teach law and medicine. I see disparities in what I teach across the state. We live in a state, to be honest, that punishes individuals for being gender non-binary and being trans. We live in a state that has great disparities in healthcare access for marginalized groups of many types and that outright denies people healthcare. We live in a state that has one of the lowest for Black women, at least, maternal mortality rates in the country. It is shameful. And so I see these issues of public safety as broadly, as encompassing healthcare, as encompassing economic security. And so I think you can say we'll get regularly in the same room, and that's important, but it's not enough. And it's great to say we want to give people a voice, but we want to show people through actions as well as words that we respect them and that we want to hear their needs and concerns. And it's not just enough to go to members of the community, because many members of the community might not talk to somebody that they don't feel comfortable with, but they will share it with their community leaders. And I've sat down with Pastor Rose and I've talked to him about these issues. And the fact that sometimes he can be a go-between between what he hears from members of his congregation that may never make it to the ears of people that community members don't know well. And so I guess, you know, to change that, ultimately, it's going to take time, but we need to get and put ourselves in areas and get comfortable in those areas and make sure people are comfortable with us. And again, just be part of those communities, hold meetings in diverse areas, et cetera, because we need to demonstrate not that we're willing to listen, but that we're actually there for people, and that show them that they are our neighbors and they are our friends.
Thank you for this great question. It's so important for everyone who's in this community to feel like they belong in this community, and that's why although it's been knocked by so many folks, DEI, it's so bad. I embrace it. We still need it, obviously. We don't have equity and we need it. And belonging is part of that. I spend a lot of time in the community, loading groceries into vehicles at Hoosier Hills Food Bank and helping folks get food at Thanksgiving at the fairgrounds with Pantry 279. I'm also part of a group called Monroe County Health Equity Council. And one of the things we've done is we've focused on including people who feel powerless but aren't powerless. The marginalized in our community are encouraged to take control of their health care, but also to connect with the health care community. We just had a meeting at Crestmont that was open to the public and the community, and that meeting at the Crestmont Boys and Girls Club involved the head of Bloomington Health Hospital and Health Net, and also other groups and agencies. And so people could ask questions. We had tables where we sat down and talked to these folks. just like they're everyday folks, because they are. And they do care. And so what we're trying to do is bring agency back on health. And health is so many things, right? It's public health. It's your own personal health care. It's your family's health care. But it is also public health, which touches on so many things. So that's been an important thing. We initiated office hours, which are by Zoom, but sometimes when someone will contact me and say, well, I'd really, I wanted to have an office hour with you, but your time doesn't work great. Do you want to meet somewhere instead? Let's sit down and have a coffee somewhere. My cell number, my personal cell number, is posted on the county website, and it's on my literature, so please call me. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We will have time for one more question, and then we'll do the wrap-up. I'd like to thank the audience for the questions that you have provided so far. I will choose one of these questions. We'll answer as a team, and then I'll give you the 90-second wrap-up. Cool? Bloomington and Monroe County is a very diverse space compared to many other Indiana counties. Given the state and national contradiction debate on DEI, what do you believe is the responsibility of the position you seek to uphold diverse, equitable, and inclusive outcomes? I'll take it again. Bloomington and Monroe County is a very diverse space compared to many other Indiana counties. Given state and national, I think that says contracts, excuse me if I did not write that right. Debate on DEI, what would you believe is the responsibility of the position you seek to uphold diverse, equitable, and inclusive outcomes? And we will start with Dr. Thomas.
Great, thank you so much. One of the things that is in my range of PhD majors is gender studies. And when I've taught in gender studies at IU and at Franklin College, we often talk about what's the difference between equality and equity and all of those things. And I think education is key. And we did sponsor and support DEI training for all county employees. And outside of one department, that was a required training. And I'd like to see us come back and do another round of that training. It was really meaningful and sparked some really interesting conversations. We have to ensure people feel safe in the workplace, but the community comes to us too for services. And we need to make sure that we are treating everyone respectfully and as a person. So that was an important part of that. And so one of the things with Monroe County Health Equity Council is we talk about health in all. How do we make sure that everything we do has a healthy outcome? And public health includes, for me, in my mind, equity and ensuring that people who feel marginalized are brought to the table, people who feel powerless are reminded that they are powerful. And bringing those voices into decision-making is an important part of this, and to think about consequences, outcomes, long-term consequences. What could we do better? What could we do differently? And that's important. And it is about having those boards and commissions staffed with residents from across our community to represent a lot of diverse voices, diversity based on not just race, class, but also gender identity, sexual orientation. We have to make sure that people do feel welcomed to the table. And that is our job, is to be educators. Thank you.
Again, this is something that has been on my mind because we have SB 202 that we're dealing with at the university, which is, cultural and ideological diversity matters and ensuring we are diverse. And I thought about that, and it seems like when we have discussions about DEI, we tend to throw a quick 30-minute or 1-hour educational session and say, oh, we're DEI certified. And we tend to treat it very superficially, and by we, I mean institutions. And I think we really have to get beyond that. Again, this piggybacks nicely on the question about public safety. We have to talk with people about the conditions that they feel they need in which to grow and to thrive, right? where do they feel that diversity is not present? Where do they feel that inclusiveness is not present? And again, I think that might come by talking from community leaders, because the last thing is, if I feel like I'm not being included, I might not feel comfortable going to non-inclusive institutions and bringing that to them directly. I might feel comfortable going to my community leaders and sharing that. And so it's being available to hear this from everyone, to actually meaningfully make strides in school diversity, right, by redistricting. I think that's a big thing that we can do as a community, because we have schools right now that are enclaves of privilege, and that should not exist. That's controversial, right? And I also think at the end of the day, we just have to demonstrate deep respect for one another, not only by being there and listening, but also by demonstrating and doing.
I feel like one of the biggest things we can do is through economic development by getting good paying blue collar jobs in here for everyone to enjoy. I think we learned during COVID that not everyone can work from home. You know, we need those vocational jobs. We need linemen, we need electricians, we need plumbers. I think the biggest thing we can do is bolster our economy here. You know, folks talk about affordable housing, but that depends on how big your paycheck is. Affordable housing's opinion based on what your income is. So that would be my biggest thing, and I would hope that it would resonate with everyone.
As a teacher at Indiana University, I will note that my classroom is more increasingly under attack on what I say, how it's perceived, and who will report me. And friends, the longer I live, the more I think we're getting back to some old ways that alarm me. And I think a lot of us think we're in another place and not here, but we are closer to that. And for many community members, they will say, well, you know, Trent, we've all been here for a long time, and we've been preaching for you to get here and wake up and recognize that. I think one of the first things we can do is more gentle people like myself can start speaking up to what we are witnessing and to what we are seeing. I have to say, I will often see my female counterparts on county council positions receive some of the, I'll just say, most misogynistic messages and correspondence from other elected officials and other individuals. And gentle me, the 9-generation townie, needs to do a better job in those moments of saying, you know what, that's out of line, and that's not how you would talk to me. We've got to find our voice in that, and that's where our friend comes off, and that's where being frank is, because it is the lack of respect for what I teach in my classroom, which is different, does not mean deficient, it just means different, and a different team with different components and different experiences and backgrounds makes a stronger team. That should be the rule of the day, right? And we've got to get to that, and that starts with people like me speaking up and being strong there and using my privilege for that, as I should be done, as I was taught to do as a kid.
So from the position of a county councilor, you know, what's the next chess move on the board of how to really uphold those DEI outcomes? You know, I think Julie had mentioned that, you know, the training the county has been through, or putting the county through training. I think Jody had mentioned the idea that, you know, it feels sometimes like an HR exercise of checking a box every year that you did the 1-hour training, and then you go back to maybe the behaviors that Trent's observed, you know, and needing to call that out. I think one chess move moving forward the county council can think about is operationalizing all that, the DEI training, right? To say, you know, if we're looking at a budget, are there outcomes that we're baking into programs that you're trying to meet the mark? You know, what's the baseline for what a program's currently doing in the county? How are you improving equity? How are you improving belonging and diversity and inclusion in your programming to expand that through what we fund? That comes back to the idea of funding values in a community, right? If we're going to care about this, then let's care about this. Let's put some benchmarks out there and then bring that back into the budget process. Tell us how you did this year. And if you're doing great with outcome-based budgeting, we'll continue to support the good work. And, you know, prove that you're internalizing the training and making it a part of the government that people expect in their community. I think that's one way to go at it. I did come from a background in public health. I think public health has been a leader in those spaces, maybe compared to other governmental institutions for some time. You know, and it comes by way of the fact that public health mindset is about trying to reach the community where it is. When you have an emergency, that you put information out in the multiple languages of the community community so they can understand it in the same way. We may need to get back to thinking in that way. If the county is messaging something, if it's saying it's closed for a week due to a cyber incident, if it's saying it's closed because the power's out, is everyone in the community getting the message the same way? Do they understand it in their first language? Do they understand it in their functional and access need spaces? That's part of operationalizing the DEI, right? And making sure that we're getting beyond just the training and making it part of the way we do business in the community. So I would just propose, from the county council position, let's go the step further. Let's fund the values. Thanks.
When it comes to diversity, equality, and inclusivity, that's a very personal definition. We need to ask the people, what does it mean to be in a diverse community? What is equity to them? What is inclusivity? They educate us. And then we, as elected officials, we educate our local government. We educate the public that this is our guarantee, that everyone deserves equal treatment under the law. And so it starts with asking those people to define these three terms. We're not the definers of it, they are. And then we educate ourselves. We share what we have learned. We make sure that we do the outreach to the public to know that this is what our local government does. It takes care. And then there isn't an issue of a lack of DEI because it's been baked in. It's baked in. And we will always have to rise up to bake that into our community behavior. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to encourage the audience. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to get to everyone's questions, but if your question is a burning question, please feel free at the appropriate time to speak to our candidates to make sure your question gets heard. So we're going to go ahead and do our quick 90-second wrap-up, and I mean quick, I will hit the boop on you this time, okay? All right, so we will start with you, Dr. Thomas.
All right, thank you, and thank you again for hosting, and thank you everyone for being here today. Your interest in civic and civics life is really amazing, especially on a beautiful day like today. As a Democrat county commissioner since 2013, before that I was on the county council, I've been always focused on working toward what the community needs, making progress, and making this an even better place year after year. Part of that is innovation and innovative programmings, rural housing repair, septic replacement, environmental stewardship, taking a leading role in fighting the National Forest Service plan to poison our lake, the watershed of our lake. That is vital. Nobody talks about it, but it's important. And engaging with our residents and working through innovative programming to help our residents. I was a county commissioner during COVID. Those were very, very long days and very, very long weeks. And I'm so glad we came out of it as well as we did, although it could have been better. But I have been tested. I am trusted. I have demonstrated my commitment to Monroe County, and I would appreciate your vote, even though I'm unopposed. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming today. I look forward to interacting with you afterwards. If you guys have questions that you guys did not get to ask, I think my biggest priority and the reason I ran for office to begin with is to take our community and make sure that it is kept safe and civil. The state's going to do what the state's going to do. It's going to keep on being anti-LGBTQ. It's going to keep on being anti-DEI. It's going to keep on being anti-environment, anti-public education, and anti-reproductive justice. But the state does not have to define our values. And when the state has very different values than a community like Bloomington, then I think we have to make sure we have a strong community, a strong county government too, to make sure that our values are kept safe and our priorities are kept safe and our citizens are kept safe. And so it's really important and increasingly important that we hold the line. And so I think we can be a bastion for those values and fight for those values. And so I'm willing to occupy that seat. I've done so at the state level. I know what it's going to take to do so at the local level, and I look forward to working with people to do just that.
Well, thank you for having me again. I think we need to attract businesses here. I think we need to grow. Monroe County needs to grow. We're losing too many folks to surrounding counties because they can't afford to live here or they can't find a job here. So I think that would be the biggest thing to me, is to keep our high school graduates here in the county. You know, we've done a pretty good job of attracting some of IU's folks, but they have a broader net to look at. You know, we need to keep our local folks here and make sure they have good career jobs. And I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you all and to spend some time this afternoon. I look forward to any questions afterwards. I will say that when I look back at the 4 years I've served, or this last term that we've served, the challenges that existed when we started, good heavens, we were online, away from people, masks on, double masks when we were out and about. A lot's happened in that time. A lot will happen in the next 4 years. I am optimistic about our future, but it will be a struggle. Literally, as we sit here right now, we are sitting on what once was a factory floor, and there were different lives here, different altogether considerations and issues, but that community then and this community now will address those challenges, rise to those challenges, and figure it out and move forward. I would love to be a person in that problem solving, serving, and doing that. If I'm not, I will do other things in life, and it has been an honor and a privilege to serve the community. I ultimately believe in this place. It is a wonderful place, beautiful place for me and my family. I would love to see that for every family in this community, and that's my goal.
Thank you for spending time with us this afternoon and having the discussion. I want to again thank Kappa Omega and the Divine Nine and AKA for hosting this event for our community. I think, first of all, I'll just say, for more information about me, please visit me at votedavidhenry.com, and that will probably sum up the very large conversation I'd like to have at the end here, but I only have a few seconds. My charge, I think, to all of us is that when I do these candidate forums is to hold the people up here accountable. Yes, we're asking for your vote, and if some of us get your vote, there's been a lot said today about what we should be doing as a community. And I will frankly be embarrassed myself if 4 years from now I'm lucky enough to sit up here and say, well, what did you do with that time? I mean, did we actually move the needle on these conversations, or is it another can-kicking activity? We've had some challenges in our community that go back 4, 8, 12, 16 years now when it comes to our jail, when it comes to building out the convention center. And I'm hoping that we turn a page in that in this 4 years. If we haven't, if we are still having some of these conversations, I expect harder questions because we should be answering them. But I'm up for that challenge. I think we need to turn the page on some of the issues that have plagued us and bring back some of the conversations that need to be in the room when we're talking about expanding a criminal justice facility to make sure that we are building out for non-law enforcement centered solutions for that. That's the work to come. So I ask for that watchdoggedness. I ask for that conversation to continue beyond Election Day, and look forward to being here again with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the sorority members who hosted this event, and Ms. McLean for being our moderator, question asker. And thank you for all of you who've come to City Hall and who've zoomed in to be present and listen to our messages. My message is simple. I am running to bring the people's voice back to our local government. so that the people are being served as they should be. We need to keep our jail and justice center downtown where it has been for 200 years. Think about that, 200 years. It's been downtown. We need to responsibly use our taxpayer dollars. We need to believe in our community that we, as a community, will find solutions where we need solutions. Please write in Joe Davis, Monroe County, Council at Large. A vote for Joe is a vote for the people. Thank you.
Again, I would like to thank both candidate parties, the county council and county commissioners, for coming with us today. We will now take a 2-minute break as we will switch over to conversation centering the school board. So please give us 2 minutes and we'll be right back.
Thank you for your wonderful work. Thank you.
With questions for the school board candidates. Again, we're going to empower you early and help you feel with that agency to go on and get your questions on our notepad so we can get started and really get into the minutia of what you want to know. But before we do that, we will be starting with introductions. And before that, I will cover again the rules. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to respond. When you're down to 30 seconds, someone will hold up the pink sign, indicating that you have 30 seconds left. When your time is up, there will be a green sign, indicating that your time is up. We will have no heckling from the audience, per usual, and we will also take questions from the audience early. Okay? So, I would like to note that we reached out to all candidates running from the school board, but candidate Ross Grimes and candidate Tiana Rojo did not respond to our multiple requests to participate in today's town hall.
As a correction, Ross Grimes did not respond to multiple requests. So I don't know why he didn't. So as the public can do what they will with that information as they may. But Tiana did RSVP, and I know she had a prior engagement before coming here. So we have her listed on the dais. We're just not certain where she is, so we are trying to contact her. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that correction. So we will begin with your 90-second introduction.
Hi, thank you for having us here. April was saying before that we don't always get invited to these forums, so thanks to Alpha AK for inviting us and for people for being here, for listening. My name is Erin Cooperman. I'm currently serving as the Vice President on the Monroe County Community School Corporation. I represent District 5, but that really just means I live in District 5. We all represent all of the students in the district. I wanted to serve on the school board because I think that education is where we start to address really the social determinants of health. That's the term we would use in public health, but all of the conditions that impact where people end up as adults. So I think the best way to address our community issues is in the schools, and I want to be a part of that. And even more specifically, I wanted to work on the equity concerns that we had within our district and start to make some changes there.
Yes, as Erin said, thank you so much for having us today. We really do not get invited to these candidate forums, so it's great to be here. And I currently serve as the board president of MCCSC. I'm a former teacher in the district, and so when the question is, what compelled you to run, it was mainly that experience of being a teacher in a classroom in the district and understanding that there were broader systemic issues that I could not solve from the classroom. So I saw students getting expelled. I saw disciplinary disparities in our district that, regardless of the sort of research that I put on people's desks or the requests I put in for different kinds of sort of harm reduction techniques and tactics, I really did not see those things being employed in the district in ways that were broad and systemic. And so for me, that was a really important piece. From an employee standpoint, I was part of the 7% of the non-white employees in the district. And when you think about all the schools in the district and the number of individuals then that make up that 7%, it's a small number, right? And so it can be isolating, and I really wanted to think about how we change that particular dynamic for the student or the employees in our district, but then also for that representation piece for our students. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you so much. So we'll start with our first question, and we will be asking this to Erin. What made you want to run for the school board?
Well, I started my career in education when I was a student here as an undergrad, let's say a long time ago. I started in the School of Ed, and when I graduated, I worked for a program that was out of the YWCA that I think did a really innovative thing, which was to pair teachers with social workers. And again, that was when I really started to see that the schools could be a partner in addressing a lot of the concerns in our community. And so that was pre-2001, and I had a variety of careers between then and now, but have always wanted to participate in making my community a better place and thought that the schools are the best place to do that. As I started having children and started learning more about the schools in our district, right before I applied to join the school board was when my daughter started kindergarten, and that was in the midst of the pandemic. And I was hearing from a lot of people about the equity concerns within MCCSC, and seeing that for myself for the first time with a kiddo in the school districts. And at the same time, watching as others that were joining the school board said that they wanted to start working on these issues, that they were addressing some of the ways in which they could make our district more equitable in a state that sometimes fights us on that. And again, I wanted to be a part of that. When I saw an opportunity to be a part of that board that I thought could really start to make a change, I wanted to get on it.
April, same question.
Okay, so I think I jumped the gun a little bit. I started to speak to that already, just about the disciplinary disparities, the sort of equity work that I saw that was necessary from a systemic level. And then from the employee standpoint as well. And for me, my entire platform was really based on those principles, right? On creating diverse learning environments that were representative of all the students in the district, that allowed for diverse hiring and retention of teachers, and then also from an equity perspective, ensuring that all of our students had the same access to all of the things we offer in a district. So for instance, we've begun to work on some of those things as a board, and I think we've made some headway, but there are still things that I would love to see us address and to tackle in concert with maybe some of the individuals you saw up here with the city and the county, to think about how do we extend, for instance, feeding our children free and reduced lunch, right, beyond just the poverty line, but for those that are in that middle zone. And then also things like greater access to transportation. So we know that a lot of times the things that we offer in terms of after-school programming, so clubs, sports, and those kinds of things can be highly inaccessible and inequitable for students who don't have transportation to and from school. And thus far, we haven't really been able to provide transportation for our students who might want to engage in those kinds of activities to enrich their lives and enrich their experiences. So we still have a lot of work, I think, to do as a board, although we are so well on our way. And I think the last thing for me, from a sort of personal perspective, thinking about the politics not only in this town, but from the state level, I really didn't see anyone that looked like myself in these positions. And so as of right now, I think I'm one of 4 elected individuals who are Asian American in the entire state of Indiana. And I'm on a school board, right? So that's 4. And I'm only one of 3 out, I'm getting a correction back there, one of 3 out LGBTQ plus individuals in the entire state of Indiana.
Thank you so much. We will be moving to audience questions at this time. The first question is, overcrowding in my child's school is a serious issue. What can or should be done to reduce class sizes and increase the number of teachers? Again, overcrowding in my child's school is a serious issue. What can or should be done to reduce the class sizes and increase the number of teachers? And April, we'll start with you.
This is a great question. And I think we've already started that work, right? And if you've taken any note of the conversations happening in the district over the past year, we've talked about redistricting. And that word is a scary one for a lot of people, and it's one that receives a lot of resistance and pushback, and we've seen that. People have been incredibly resistant to the notion of redistricting, of balancing socioeconomic status, of merging school populations in order to achieve this, and a host of other things, right? And so I think part of that work is that we are assessing, and we've had the redistricting consultant come out to assess our school populations and to understand our building capacities and the way in which our buildings are being used to their fullest potential or not. And so what that means is that sometimes we may need to shuffle students across buildings, because it might be true that we have too many students in one building and too many teachers in another building. So it might not be about hiring more teachers, it might be about redistributing both the population of students and teachers. And so that's the work that we've already sort of embarked on and are, it's well underway, and we'll continue to do that work over the next year. But I think this is one of those things that if you are in favor of this, if you're in support of this kind of work, I'd love for you to show up at our school board meetings, to give public comment, to talk about those things, because a lot of times the only people who show up to talk about these things are the people who resist these actions. And so what ends up happening is that you hear a lot of resistance and you do not hear a lot of support for these issues and for the work I think that is so important to maintaining a healthy balance in our district.
Thank you.
Yeah, April and I speak together a lot, and there's always a danger when I go after her that she's going to steal everything I wanted to say, and that's the benefit of that is that it also shows there's a lot of unity on the board, and that's one of the ways in which we're able to actually get things done. So I think redistricting is really important. The other thing that I would note is that we've been really fortunate in our community to have community support. When we put referendums on the ballot, they tend to pass, and that's happened twice in the past 3 years. So the first referendum that we did while I was on the board was about teacher salaries and increasing our teacher salaries. And so I think we're really fortunate to have that support from our voters in this community. That's one way in which we're going to make sure that we can always recruit and retain the best teachers, that we don't suffer a teacher shortfall, hopefully might give us the opportunity to create a more diverse work staff, so we can make sure that we have enough teachers to serve what we know is going to be a growing student body in our county.
Thank you. For the next theme of questions, I want to ask this particular question, and Aaron, I'll start with you. What incentive or approach would you guys take to bring more diverse staffing, more diverse educators of colors into schools so that diverse student populations can see themselves? Again, the question is, what incentives or approaches would you take to expand more diverse staffing, more faculty/educators of color into our schools so that the diverse students population can see themselves? And Aaron, we'll start with you.
First, I want to start by thanking you for that question and maybe acknowledging that this is something that we should spend more time on as a district. I know others in the room were at the NAACP's celebration of Brown versus Board a couple weeks ago, where this came up a lot too. And as as people were speaking on it at that time, I thought, this is part of our strategic plan, but maybe the part of our strategic plan that we haven't spent as much time on as it's due. That said, I think that the first place is by identifying it as a priority, which we have done as part of our strategic plan. We've also taken some other initiatives like doing a Grow Your Own project within the schools to try to attract people from our community to be teachers and then stay within Monroe County when they do become teachers. Again, to go back to that referendum, we try to offer a competitive salary, but also to support our teachers in other ways in this community that make this an attractive place to work so that more diverse teachers will want to come to our community. And then I think the third thing is making sure that we maintain a climate that is inclusive and welcoming to everyone. We're focused on doing that in a variety of ways with students right now. We also need to make sure that we're doing that with our faculty and staff within the schools to make sure that if we are able to attract more diverse teachers, that this also is a place that they want to stay once they're here. And I think we are working with our superintendent and her team on a variety of strategies for that. I think our interim superintendent certainly is someone who has a lot of good ideas about how to do this.
Yeah, I think, I definitely agree with everything Erin said, and I would say for me, the number one attractor is going to be the culture of the school district, right? So if we have a district that has a reputation for not being welcoming and inviting to all, then it is unlikely that we're going to retain individuals who might come here based on salary, right? Because we do pay higher salary than many other districts in the state. But they're not going to stay if they find it to be an unwelcoming environment. And so I think for me, that's one of the number one things that we can do is really ensure that the culture and the climate of our district is one that welcomes individuals and that provides them support as they come in. And so I've actually asked the question about employee resource groups, ERGs, which often exist in other sort of corporate spaces, and maybe we've tiptoed into that but haven't really fully, moved into that space. I would also say that one of the things that we have begun to do as a district is to think about how and where we recruit, and so not just sort of showing up at these sort of spaces where we might not find the people that we're looking for, right? Because those spaces in and of themselves are not welcoming. So even sitting here today, I'm thinking, why are we not partnering with the Divine Nine? Or why are we not partnering with these other organizations that exist in our community that have large networks of individuals and people that they could potentially tap into? So I think that in and of itself is one of those things that we can do. And then, I think it's a hard thing. A lot of the sort of national conversation has been about this for some time. And so I think it's tough. And it's tough when historically we haven't done this work sort of robustly, right? I know that it takes time. Systems changes take time. And so I think that we're going to get there. I just think that it's a matter of, working with the right partners, getting in the right spaces, having the right conversations, and we'll be there.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. It seems to be some resistance to the Child-Templeton merger. Why do you think that is? Again, there seems to be some resistance to the Child and Templeton merger. Why do you think that is? And Erin, why?
Thanks for letting me go first on this one. So every time that we speak on this, I try to lead with empathy. And I think that anytime you are making decisions that impact people's children, it's going to be emotional and there's going to be resistance. And I think that, and fear, frankly. It's hard to know that decisions are being made that will impact your children that you feel like you don't have any control over. And that is where I can really empathize with both people who support the change and people who don't. That They're worried about, are siblings going to be separated? Are their kids going to be spending longer times on buses? What's the classroom size going to be? They have a lot of questions that it just takes a process before we can answer all of the questions. And so I think that's a big part of the reason, is that we, a board of 7 people, are making decisions that are going to change the lives of their kids, and that's scary, and I think that's a big part of where the opposition comes from.
I feel like these are different kinds of questions than the last group got. It's interesting. Harder in some ways. No, maybe not. I'm kidding. So, look, there are a lot of answers to this question, right? And I think the number one answer is probably fear, and I actually think that fear is a response on all sides of this issue. So whether you fall into some of the more marginalized populations or whether you fall into the more population with access or privilege, I think that there's fear. Change is scary, right? And so anytime you suggest or initiate wide-scale change, there's going to be anxiety and fear. I think what underlies that fear for the different populations of people is probably something very different, right? And so we've heard some of that in our conversations. We've heard fears about academic decline. We've heard fears about children being exposed to things before their time. We've heard all kinds of things from all kinds of people, and I think at the end of the day, what it demonstrates to me is that this community is still very segregated, right? Segregated by race, ethnicity, by population, or by sort of socioeconomic status. And it confirms for me, or affirms for me, that this is the right work and the right decision, as hard as it might be. And that our job as a board and as we guide our district administration is to ensure that we do the least amount of harm that we can in this process, knowing that the other side of this, or the end result of it, which is a space in which we are less segregated, less in our silos and buckets, actually benefits all of us, right? Not just the low-income kids, not just the high-income kids, but all of us.
Thank you. Question's kind of similar, but a little bit different. How can county government best help MCCSC? Are there any particular ways that you believe the county can support public education? Again, how can county government best help MCCSC? Are there any particular ways that you believe that the county can support public education? And April, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's one that we haven't, as a board, or I think as a community, a county, a city, we haven't spent enough time being in conversation with one another about how we help the children that are our sort of common interests across all these spaces. And so for me, one of the big things, a couple of things I already mentioned, was food, access to food. How do we feed our kids, right? And during COVID, we had access, because of federal funding, to free and reduced lunch for all of our students. And it was a beautiful thing, right? Because no one was sort of isolated in that experience, and no one had to get the different meal, or no one had to, everybody had the same thing every day, right? And I think that in and of itself can be something that helps students, not draw the lines or the differences between themselves, right? That's one visible way that everybody can see, oh, you're getting this kind of lunch, or you're getting this kind of lunch. And so I think to have that kind of access to food for all, or at least for some of our populations that need it most, would be one way. Another would be sort of access to transportation. I know that a lot of districts have agreements with their cities or their counties or whatever it may be to provide transportation for students in different ways. And I know that there is some, students can get a free bus card, I think, here. But, thinking about how do those lines match up with where our schools are and where our students might need to go, that's another question. So I think those are a couple of ways in which we can begin to have those conversations.
Yeah, I agree with April that I think the issue is that we need to do more communicating because we're trying to address social issues that are not siloed, and that certainly was brought to bear during the pandemic. And it's also being pointed out again as we work towards desegregating our schools. Of course, our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated. And so we need the help of city and county government to work with us as we work to desegregate our schools because our neighborhoods need that same effort. And other things come up, for example, when people come out to oppose the merger, one of the things that keeps coming up is the sidewalks. Well, we don't actually fix the sidewalks as the school district, so we, again, need help from our local government to get those things addressed. And vice versa, there were questions about why we keep some of our playgrounds locked and don't keep those open to the community. And when we built the new Templeton playground, that is now open to the public. I think the only one that's still locked is the Fairview playground. So there are things that the schools can do too to make the community, to help the community. I think, again, to go back to that question about how do we recruit and retain more people of color to teach in our schools, well, if we are successful at recruiting teachers to come to Bloomington to teach, they're not going to stay unless our community is also an inclusive place to live. And we need the help of city government and really all the people in the community to make sure that this is a community that teachers want to stay in and want to keep teaching in our schools if we want our workforce to reflect our student body.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions from the audience. The next question is, due to school shootings around the country, why don't school resource officers have some sort of weapon to protect our children, at least in their vehicles? Again, due to school shootings around the country, why don't school resource officers have a sort of weapon to protect our children, at least in their vehicles? Aaron?
Well, I think under state law, they have to be allowed to have one in their vehicle. Isn't that true? Yeah. So currently, the current policy in MCCSC is that no one in our schools can have a weapon, or a firearm, I should say. But again, we are preempted in some ways from what we can do to keep guns further away from our school because of state law. We made this decision a few years ago based on research that shows that knowing that there are officers in the school that are armed can have damaging emotional impacts on students of color. And so we weighed the costs and benefits of that time of having armed officers in our schools against the harm that can be done and decided that for our schools, we wanted to protect our students of color by keeping guns out of our schools.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would also add that, a lot of the research also shows that when there are guns in the school, there are more injuries because of crossfire. So it's not actually true that guns in school keep students safer. And as a result of that and the other sort of research and things that we found, we made a determination to disarm our SROs. And, it's a controversial decision. I mean, some people really feel that guns are going to keep them safer, and other people do not. I think our police response time in this city is actually quite expedient. They've always shown up for us whenever we've called them or needed them within a very short time frame or window. And so I think, it's also true that whenever you have officers, and this is from a sort of administrative perspective, but when you have officers who are armed on a campus, the insurance to carry is actually quite high. Right, and this is something that people don't understand, that the insurance to carry is high, right? And so just thinking about how can we actually reallocate resources so that we are not just paying for insurance for people to carry, but that potentially we could do more sort of proactive work to ensure that, we have more student services or support services or things like that we could offer, hopefully in preventative ways, as opposed to then having to be sort of reactive in a shooting moment. So it's kind of where we landed.
Thank you so much. And this will be our final question, and then we'll do a 90-second wrap-up. Cool? All right. What are your thoughts about the revised potential graduation diplomas?
I mean, I think this is just the latest in the way that the state decides to hand out missives on what we should do, what we should be doing, how we should be teaching, what curriculum we should be using. And it's problematic and harmful. And I would actually say, you know, I have often sort of lamented the fact that teachers are professionals. They have degrees in their field. We have people in our district with bachelor's degree, associate's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, multiple degrees, you know? And yet, for some reason, the profession of teaching is never treated as a profession of professionals. And so people are always kind of telling teachers what they should do and how they should do it, as if they are not the professionals in their field who understand their classrooms and their children and their jobs and their pedagogical sort of needs. So I find it to be just another sort of way in which we do this to teachers and to the profession. And I will also say, I just think that, you know, the regulating of education in this way, requiring teachers to flex and change their practices and their instructional curriculum year to year, or every couple of years, as we've seen iLearn change and all of these things, is detrimental to the work that they can do in the classroom if they're constantly having to pivot. And yet we defund or underfund public education every single year in this state as well. So we're giving them less money and yet more responsibility. And so I just find it problematic. The whole thing.
I agreed, and I think it's just one more example of the way in which the Indiana legislature has really been attacking public education and trying to micromanage it. We've been forced as a board to pass policies that we don't personally agree with, things like making it easier for parents to challenge the books that we have in our libraries, or requiring teachers to notify parents when students ask for their pronouns to be changed in school. They're micromanaging us, and they're micromanaging the teachers, and the diploma change is part of a philosophy at the State House to really discourage college education in our workforce, and that the evidence shows that is not actually an effective way of serving our community, nor is it really an effective way of creating a solid workforce in the state. So I think we're going to see backlash to that in Indiana, and that's unfortunate. We do whatever we can to shield our students from the negative impacts of the things that the Indiana legislature tries to do, but it's unfortunate that that's the position we're so often put in.
Thank you, ladies. Now we'll have our 90-second wrap-up. April?
I just want to thank you all for being here today, and thank you again to the Divine Nine for having us. We are, I guess, fortunately, unopposed, all of us this time around, but I still would love your vote. And I also think, sometimes I just would love to see more community engagement, honestly. I would love to see you at our meetings. I would love to hear from you. Whether or not I agree with you or disagree with you, I think it's important for all of us. It's important for our students to see people engaged in the process of advocating for them. I mean, some of the things that happened this year or the past couple of years, the anti-racism policy that we put on the books, that would not have happened without students stepping up to the plate and then the community stepping up to sort of support them. And so I think we are always welcoming that kind of collaboration. This board is, I think. And so I just would love to see that be sort of continued and then also expanded in whatever way we can see that.
Once again, she's stolen my answer, that's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you so much for having us here. We don't really get as much time as I wish we had to really talk about these issues with each other or with the public, and so having the opportunity at forums like this is really valuable. And again, I hope that you will vote for us, but you can't vote for anyone else. So I would just say, instead of thank you for your vote, I thank you for your support support. I think with things like the upcoming merger, with redistricting, what we see over and over again is a small group of committed opponents who come out to events, and we assume that there is a non-vocal or silent majority that supports a lot of the things that we're doing, but we would love to hear from them more often. And we would love for the community to hear from them more often so that it wasn't just us saying these are the things that we think we should be doing. And I'm glad that April noted that, I think in an earlier question when we were asked about how do we recruit and retain a diverse workforce, we didn't mention that we recently passed an anti-racism policy, not only for the students, but then also we followed it up with one for the faculty and staff. And I think it is really important to note that that was instigated by a group of students that came to the board to share their own experiences with racism within our schools. That's it. That's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment and thank all of our candidates, from the county commissioners to our school board members to county council at large. Thank you for coming out to meet with us today. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Also, thank you to the audience for engaging in well thought out questions, but none of this would be possible without the support of our Sisters in the Divine Nine, which are the Bloomington alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and the Upsilon Kappa Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So at this time, I would call a representative from each organization to give just a few remarks. Ooh. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this thing's on. So, good afternoon. My name is April White. I am the chapter president of the Upsilon Kappa Zeta chapter here of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated here in Bloomington, Indiana. So first, I want to thank the ladies of Kappa Tau Omega chapter from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for this opportunity to collaborate. I also want to thank the candidates for taking that time out today to come and provide your platforms to us. I think this was a great forum. You know, as we've said earlier, we are less than 2 weeks away from voting, right? And we all have an obligation to go to the polls, right? To utilize our voices to let them be heard. If you do not, you know, whether you have already early voted or you have not yet voted, it is best to be informed. And this is what this forum was meant for. You know, if you do not take that time out to vote, then it's just like letting someone make a decision for you, right? And that is not something you are looking to do. So, you know, I encourage you all, you know, to stroll to the polls, go to the polls. However you get to the polls, let's get to the polls, right? As one of the candidates said earlier, let's make sure we bring somebody with us. And let's make sure we either early vote or we all make sure we show up on November 5th. So I just thank you guys for your time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Martha Chamberlain. I'm the financial secretary for the Bloomington Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Again, thank you all, everyone, for attending this event. We thank the ladies of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority for actually organizing it and allowing us to be co-sponsor of the event. And as was stated earlier, Election Day is around the corner. If you have voted early, thank you so very much. If you're going to vote on Election Day, call me. I'll take you to the poll. Call me. I'll take someone else to the poll. We, the members of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, would like to assist you in any way possible of voting on Election Day. But just make sure you vote. And again, thank all the candidates for being here. Thank you very much.
Hello, I am Shanice Johns, and I am representing Kappa Tau Omega, chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Give me a second. I am a teacher. I talk to kids, not adults. So, I'm going to read off this list. I wanted to thank everyone for coming today. It is a beautiful day, and you could have been anywhere, and you were here today. So I want to thank you again for coming. I want to send a special thank you to all the candidates that came today. Again, you could be anywhere, but you were here, and you came to give us all the information about you and your platform. And as a member of the Kappa Tau Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I would like to give a special shout out to our sponsors, our co-sponsors, the Bloomington Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated Upsilon Kappa Zeta chapter. And again, you have 10 days to vote, and early voting is open now. You guys have an amazing day.
This now concludes our candidate forum. Just as I said at the earlier part, if you have burning questions that you would like to ask members of the school board, take advantage of this opportunity to get your questions asked. Again, we are so grateful that you came, and like my sister said, have an amazing day.